Kyle Klingman with Track Wrestling. More breakdown of Dynasty duels. It doesn't matter what team we're breaking down right now, 91 Iowa, 92 Iowa, because they were identical lineups. And we have the 190-pounder from that lineup. He was a two-time All-American, placed 6th in 91, 5th in 92. He's from Marengo, Iowa. Travis Fiser, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, I see in the background, we got to see this. I see a Hawkeye flag, and then I see a co-college flag. And the co-college flag is important because your teammate at a weight class higher at heavyweight was maybe the most exciting heavyweight in NCAA championship history. John Ostendorp is the coach there. You have a son that goes to co. I'm assuming you're pretty good friends with Big O still.
Still a fan of Big O, and he was a lot of fun to watch, wasn't he? He was when he started wrestling, you didn't know where them guys were going to land. And just a great guy, full high energy. John's doing great, and I think my kid made a good choice trying to wrestle for him.
You stay in touch with him quite a bit? You talk to him?
More now than before. I mean, I'm out in Virginia now, so it's kind of a long ways away. But anytime I'm around there, get to see him during camps. We take some kids to the Iowa camp still, and he'll be having a few kids down working out with the Hawks and stuff like that. So I get to say hi. So it's and it's good. It's good to catch up.
We've talked to a couple guys from these teams on 91, 92, and one of the unique parts is that of the starting 10, 7 were Iowa guys. I don't know if you realized at the time, but now that you think of the lineup being predominantly Pennsylvania kids, did that seem strange at all to you that you had 7 to 10 guys in the lineups and 2 of the guys were North Dakota and the other one was New York?
Yeah, not really. Steiner's, Tommy Ryan, it was like we all grew up together. We were all kind of the same mentality. I mean, you didn't really talk about where people came from or this or that. It was just about kind of the same goals. It was just kind of everybody kind of like-minded is what I remember of it. And Tom Ryan, I watched a little bit with the Steiner, and he just fit right in. And I think if you had a strong work ethic, we didn't really care where you came from. So
you came from Marengo, and probably not a huge wrestling hotbed, but you developed through there. What was Marengo, Iowa wrestling scene like?
No, we weren't quite a hotbed, but it was rural Iowa, small town. Get a few kids to state every year. Maybe they qualify. Maybe they place. Maybe we get a champ. Something like that. We started really with Mike McGivern being a state champ there back in the 70s. And he was a coach for me for my first 2 years and really kind of got me started with the Iowa camps. If you remember right, Jay Robinson was down there in Iowa doing those J-Rod camps. And he was still the assistant at Iowa, and that's kind of how I cut my teeth on meeting all the Iowa guys and kind of got my start going. Was Mike taking me down there one summer and dropping me off the second 2 weeks of the J-Rob camp, and that was an event in itself. So he was an All-American for Gable, I think, in '77. So he was somebody I really looked up to and really kind of got my kind of turned me into being a wrestler. So a lot of credit goes to him.
Your path was different because you went junior college and then you went Iowa. Why junior college first, and what made you think you were good enough to wrestle at Iowa?
I needed to get my grades up to begin with. I was more oriented about trying to do some wrestling, and I looked at a few schools in that, but I think grade-wise it was better for me to start off kind of small and then go into it. Getting dropped into a big university like that I would have been on, I would have needed a lot of help, and I needed better study habits and things like that. But I had a good work ethic for wrestling, and that's kind of what helped me a little bit, because I needed to grow up a little bit. So that's kind of how I got started at Kirkwood with Johnny Johnson in that bunch, and he was super coach for me to head towards Iowa.
When you talk about these teams, it's just more than anything, you just think about the room and how many great guys there were in this era. Talk about the room and what that was like to just have everyone be good at the same time. I think Terry Steiner always brings up that you had 11 All-Americans returning in 92. I mean, what was that room like?
Competitive, high intensity. Uh, Everybody was kind of trying to, I mean, we were working together. There wasn't like it wasn't like your Russell Okie State or Penn State or somebody like that. It was just more like competitive. I got to go out and do what I'm supposed to do today, uh, and you kind of fed off of each other. And it was kind of a 24/7 thing. We had our typical workouts, at 3:30 in the afternoon, but there was a lot done before classes even started with a drill or a lift, or maybe your sauna, and then there might even be some late night workouts. So it was a heck of a culture to be in. And if you needed motivated, that was pretty easy because there was somebody going to the gym. I know a lot of times my first year with Tommy Ryan, when we redshirted, we just couldn't get enough. It was kind of like you're young, you're green, you want to do everything. I remember the workouts. One of the first ones we had was with Randy Lewis that I remember, and he crushed us. I mean, it was airdyne, lifting, back to an airdyne, sprints, intensity, and I'd never worked that hard in my life. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what did I sign up for? And everybody, and we all had to cut our teeth. I mean, there was a lot of times in the rooms, you think of some of the better guys, Tom and Terry, like they're just going to be dominant in the room, but when they first come in, and they can tell you that too, it was hard. It was hard for everybody, and but you wanted to make Gable happy. You wanted to impress him. You didn't want to be the weak link in the chain kind of deal. So it was day in and day out. It was get up and put your boots on and go get it.
What, what was your relationship like with Gable in the room?
um, and it was in the room and off the mat. He kind of knew he was kind of like he was something to everybody. And I guess to me, he was kind of like a dad and a coach. He's somebody you want to impress, but you're still going to listen to when he tells you to do something. And like I said, I needed to probably study a little bit more and work out a little bit less. But he was kind of like, hey, you got to be doing both. And he was just the guy that whenever he talked, like we'd have a meeting before practice and everybody's sitting up there and he's talking and you're going and you think he's talking to you. That's how he presented himself. And sometimes he would call you out, and sometimes it'd be good. Sometimes it would be, hey, you need to work on this. He might say, hey, your takedowns are here. You got to score more points. You got to be more dominant. It might be, hey, you did a good job winning here. Can you keep doing it up? Where's your consistency at? And just try to keep you at a high level. But he was just he took really good care of me, and I just but he did that with everybody too. He knew how to talk to each person to kind of push a button or two. But when he talked to us as a group, you thought he was just talking to you individually, which was pretty neat and rare. And I think that's what made him kind of the coach that he was or is. So
You still stay in touch with him?
yeah, a little bit, not as much as you'd like, but we talked a little bit. I talked to him a little bit about when my son was going to college, and he called around graduation time, and kind of, he's not one for long conversations. He's kind of like, hey, how you doing? Where you headed? And still gives great advice. Couple texts here and there, he explains things, and it's just like, boy, he still has it. And and that's just with that team, I think he produced a lot of coaches too. I think if you look at it up and down the lineup, whether it was high school or college. So I mean, he's done a heck of a job for wrestling. That's for sure.
Well, you're in your 23rd year at Grundy High School in Virginia. What kind of things do you take from Gable that you apply with your team?
Wow. You just try to be have a relationship with every kid that's gonna benefit them. You kind of got to be a bit of a a chameleon a little bit. Some kids are big time wrestlers. They love the big matches and they can thrive on that. And then I've got some kids that are need to build on their on their self-esteem and things like that. And you got to maybe kick them. They got to be a little more scared of me than they are the guy that they're wrestling. So you're just trying to figure it out. Um, and we're in a tough area, and you just try to kind of be a dad to them. You try to be a coach. You try to treat them the way you wanted to be treated. And I try to remember that from the way Gable treated me. So that's each kid's different. I wish they came with instructions.
But if you could describe that era of Iowa wrestling, that 91, 92, because it really was a unique time, because 4-year championship drought, they come back and they dominate in 91, 92, the years you were there. What was that culture like? What did it feel like being part of such a great time in Iowa wrestling?
Um, we you said 7 of us were from Iowa, and everybody kind of grew up around the country watching Iowa wrestling on PBS. I remember as a young kid, we're probably all watching Dan Gable and his teams running through the 80s, and Barry Davis, the Bannock, Seleskis. We all knew those guys. Trezinos. I mean, there's just Goldman. There's just a long list of Randy Lewis, just great guys that we grew up watching on TV, and you wanted to be something like that, but you didn't really probably know all the work they were putting into it. And so you kind of grew up knowing that, and that was big. I mean, I remember watching with my dad and on Saturday nights and things like that. So you're growing up in that culture where Dan Gable, Iowa wrestling's big. And now it's kind of like, hey, I'm getting a chance to go do this and live a dream. And when you're in that kind of a culture, when you're in that kind of a group of guys, it was like the perfect storm. I mean, it was just, from Zapple to Ozendorf, everybody was like I said, like-minded, and just really thought they could win a national championship. We did things the best I mean, there wasn't any like weak links, like where somebody was like taking a week or two off or skipping practice or having things that we were all pretty driven to the same goal. And I think that was what was unique about those years. They're just, if you were, I can remember a few times if you were injured in something like that, people were asking about you. I remember a time having an injury in preseason, and I was like, I'm just going to get on the Airdyne instead of going out and running the golf course. And I remember Terry Brandt's coming up saying, "Hey, you okay? Like, what's the matter?" Like 2 things, like, are you okay? And the other one is, we need you. Don't be sandbagging. And I remember Troy Steiner kind of coming up and asking me the same kind of question that day. So it was kind of like, hey, you better keep up with everybody. And if you need some time off, take it, but it better be legit. And it was, it was, I don't know something like a Navy SEAL thing. I haven't done the SEAL thing, but it was sort of like that. It was kind of like the best of the best. You better be strong, stay strong. And if you needed some help, they would give it to you. Everybody was pretty good to each other. It wasn't like trying to run somebody off, but if you weren't going to be able to cut it, you needed to get out of the way and let somebody else that was going to do it. So that was kind of, so it was competitive. It was competitive.
I mean, I have to imagine you and Big O scrapped quite a bit in the room. What were those battles like?
Try to keep my feet on the ground. Try to wear it out and weather the storm. He'd kind of come at you with big holds and things, and just try to fight the long fight. And it was back and forth a lot. And there's days that you would get things, and there was days that he would. So it was just, and that's really how it went. Our week was, you didn't walk in there and say, hey, you want to wrestle today. You talked on either the week before or sometime over the weekend. Hey, I've got, Chelsvig, me and you are going on Monday. You want to go? Yeah. Hey, Tommy Ryan, you want to wrestle on Tuesday? Then you might grab Alger on a Wednesday. I mean, you had your work week before it even started, or you weren't going to get a partner. And, things had happened. People get hurt, a little bit banged up, but it was, you kind of took care of that. And if Gable didn't like to pair up, he would switch things around as well. But we kind of took care of who we're going to go. And you're kind of, at least for me, it was like, hey, if I got to wrestle Alger on a Wednesday, I got to be ready to go, and you're kind of thinking about that. That's in the back of your mind, how that's going to go. And, or Chelsea or something like that. And so you're almost planning a competition each day. And I think that's really elevated a lot of us in there. So.
Well, just taking what you said, I have to think that just permeates into the rest of your life and in handling situations. Like, it sounds like there can't really be anything harder physically or mentally than what you went through in those years at Iowa wrestling.
I don't think so. I don't think there was. I mean, Gable kind of prepared you for life. I mean, when you're out in front of 1,000 people or several thousand people wrestling and you fall on your face, that's humbling. And, everybody's done it. I've done it. And you got to kind of learn to live with it and kind of go, woo, I don't want to go down that road. And sometimes it comes up, you get your hand raised. And actually, a lot of times at Iowa, you get your hand raised. I mean, Gable kind of had a way of doing that, kind of getting more out of you than you thought you had. And out of a lot of guys that maybe wouldn't have thrived as much in other programs, I guess a way of saying it. Just great coaching on his part. But you just every day you had responsibility and you had to take care of it. Gable wasn't going to call and get you up out of bed. He didn't get you up. He didn't call you and get you up out of the for the morning runs. You were there. It was just and it was kind of something we policed too. I think a little bit. My first couple of years, I lived with Terry Brands and Tom Ryan, and it was almost like a race to see if we get to practice first. We're kind of driving, taking back streets. It's like, I'm slipping out of here. I mean, it's little things like that we did just to kind of keep up, just to kind of keep pushing the edge. Who could do a little more? And I think it just helped. It helped sharpen everybody. So that's kind of what Gable kind of taught everybody.
As we mentioned, you're a high school coach, 23 years into Grundy High School. Do you ever pop in and show them Competitor Supreme?
It's been a long time. I had some videos and some things, and I have shown some of those. I really like the old the highlight tapes with Brands and Cross and Alger and Jackson and Card, Zaleski, guys like that, Bannock's wrestling. I remember them old memory tapes that they had. We played a lot of those, and kind of keep the focus on the big match and try to get them up for that. But we've done a little. I haven't pulled that out in quite a while, so maybe I need.
What are your thoughts here on Old Dominion dropping wrestling? That's a blow, of course, losing a Division I program, being in Virginia.
That's a heartbreak. Martin's a good friend of mine. It's been a long-standing program. I'm just feeling like I didn't see that coming. And wrestling is such a kind of a hotbed out that way. And the Martin family, it's just wrestling's through and through. It's in their DNA. And I wish they could kind of reconsider that and get that back. But there's, it's just I know Steve's a great guy, and he's going to figure out something there. And hopefully it could get resurrected. But I don't know. Hope for the best.
How much longer do you want to coach?
I don't know. I mean, I still like it. I'm a whole lot older now. Don't get to do quite as much as I'd like to. Aches and pains and that. And thank all my teammates for the injuries and all that and the sore backs and knees. But, as long as I think the kids need it nowadays. They really need to. I think there's one thing with a lot of families nowadays with broken families that they need to have somebody that's going to say, hey, take responsibility for yourself, do the right things, and wrestle. Wrestling's a great vehicle to learn a lot about yourself, and as long as I keep doing that, I'll stick around a little longer. So,
well, hey,
Hey, one other thing. I just want to say thanks for all this. I tell you what, this is with everybody being locked up inside. I think this is a great time to look back at our history of our sport. And I was listening to some of Barry and that '83 team, which, me growing up, I'd have to say, yeah, that was probably one of the best teams. And I think everybody before us, we always kind of look at it that they were always maybe a little bit better. I remember the Chipperelli and Alger and that bunch, and you always looked up to those guys. But I think it's a great time for us to look at our history of our sport and where we went. And I think I was looking at Bannock, Eddie. I think it was the finals, and they were wrestling on the floor of some gym. No elevated thing. And these kids nowadays really have a rock star kind of status when they get to the nationals with the television, the stages, the lights. And so it's come a long way. And I hope these kids get to appreciate some of this and maybe have some good memories and keep wrestling going strong.